I lent into that data. I started posting one a day. Lived experience plays such a huge role in building a successful business. One post that goes to 1 million views every single week. If it doesn't work out, I can always go back to teaching.
This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. Martin, welcome to the Education Business Podcast. So I reached out to you mainly because I see all of the things that you're doing on Instagram and I think, wow, these memes and these reels are so funny. It's helping you grow your business, and you were a teacher once. So how did that happen? How did you leave teaching? What made you come to that decision and end up in business as you are now?
Hey, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I always like to have fun on Instagram. Do you know what? I think I've been on Instagram now for 5 years. I didn't even have it before I left teaching. But I just knew that social media was the way to grow a business. I think it's so important. And I think there's such a strong education community on Instagram that I think anyone who is looking at any type of education business 100% needs to be on Instagram because it is so powerful. And yeah, I was a teacher for a decade. I was a primary school teacher. I taught mostly year 5, but I had kind of a bit of a rough experience in the very first school I was ever in. It really affected my mental health and I ended up putting on a lot of weight. But then what happened because of that was I decided that I wasn't going to live my life that way. And I got my own coach. I learned about health. I learned about nutrition. And over the years, that actually evolved into me wanting to know more and more, probably the teacher in me. I got a personal training qualification. And for that, I needed some guinea pigs. I needed people to try it out with to show that I knew what I was doing would work. And they got really good results. Their friends noticed. They asked whether they could pay me to do it, which was amazing. And all of a sudden I had this little side hustle. And after about a year, I was in a place where I was thinking, do you know what? I think this could become a full-time thing for me. So I decided to take the leap because I always thought, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to teaching. And to me, I think that's the one beauty of teaching that we've all got. Like, we've got such a safety net that we can go and take those risks. And if it doesn't work out, in a couple of weeks' time, you can be doing supply. By the next school year, you're going to have a job in a new school. So I took that leap, and now it's been like about 5 years, and I've not looked back, and I've loved every second of it.
What an amazing journey into business you've had. They say, don't they, that if you've had the experience yourself, you're going to find it so much easier to grow a business because you have been the customer. And with Classroom Secrets, that was the case for me. I was that struggling teacher who had no time to create resources. But I did really enjoy doing it. So it made sense that I went into resource creation for my business. But I think when we can be the transformation ourselves, we have that level of understanding, don't we? That is just so important. And what's interesting from an education business perspective is that's where I see that people who have an education business who haven't necessarily been in the classroom before find it harder unless they have really good links to teaching, say in their really good friends or their family. It really is important to have experienced it for yourself. So I think that is a real strength of yours and others in the education sector as well. And I love that you mentioned the safety net, because that's certainly how I looked at it when I stepped out of the classroom officially in 2009, actually. I did quite a lot of supply, but I had that mindset of, well, I can always go back to teaching. And throughout that time, that's when I did all my primary teaching, because I'd not done that before and learned all of that on the job. But I think not everyone looks at it in that way. Sometimes we look at it and think, oh gosh, I could never go back to teaching, or I'd have to go back to teaching. And I've certainly thought about that mindset. Like, I wouldn't want to go back into teaching now, because the last time I taught in a classroom in an employed capacity was 2015. So you're talking 10 years ago. And I absolutely love what I do. So I just don't see that in my future. And I suppose maybe that's the mindset people are coming at it with. But I do think it is true. And it's a way of really leaning into what is positive about teaching and that ability to do that. And, you know, when I first started teaching, I really thought that I would be going on supply and then doing auditions around it. And so I had that mindset from the very beginning. Well, teaching's a fallback, and it really can be a fallback. And I think I wanted to highlight that because you're right. And anyone listening to this podcast thinking, oh, it's hard running my business, or I want to go into business, but I'm stuck in my teaching job. Yes, it's harder because you do have to make financial sacrifices, but we are very lucky. You can always just fall back into teaching. And especially now with so many teachers leaving the classroom, it is becoming easier to make that shift. So I think, I wanted to highlight that because I think it's important. But back to Instagram, because I think I'd be missing a trick if I didn't get your insights on Instagram. And so I wanted to just delve into that, if you don't mind. So did you sort of figure out Instagram for yourself? And I know that it's always a moving picture, but did you just try things out, or do you have something that is best practice in your mind? Do you look at the different sort of publications that Instagram put out when they make changes? Or do you kind of just go with it and experiment things and think, oh, that must be an algorithm change and I'll try this and see what falls out of it? Maybe it's an amalgamation of all those things. But how do you do Instagram and keep being able to get results from it?
Oh, absolutely. I think lived experience plays such a huge role in building a successful business. And I think even more so in the education sector. You know, it's like you've just said, when you've been in the trenches yourself, you just get it in a way that makes your business so much more impactful. And let's be honest, teachers can spot a blagger a mile off. We've all sat in the staff meetings with someone who they've brought in who you think you haven't got a clue. So to me, that background gives you that real advantage in creating something that truly resonates. And funny enough, I've actually been thinking about this, how some people come out of the classroom too quickly and position themselves as an expert after, say, just a year. I see it all the time. Someone teaches for a year and then they come out saying, I know what it's like. But realistically, you need to have lived it. You need the experience in different year groups, different schools, different pressures. The deep understanding. That's how you can help better. And funny enough, like on the flip side, my actual secret ambition is I want to be back in the classroom. But for me, it's not about just going back because I need to. I want to do it because I've put myself out of a job. Like, my whole goal is to help solve the work-life balance problem that teachers face. If I can do that, and I can make so much of an impact that the issue is generally solved, then my work's going to be done. And I'll go back into the classroom knowing that I've not just helped the kids that I'm working with, but potentially every single child in Britain for the future. And that to me, like, excites me more than anything. Now, Instagram, I think that's a great question. And honestly, I'd say it's a mix of both strategy and consistent experimentation. I've had a lot of coaches myself. I think anyone who's in the line of work that I'm in would be a massive hypocrite if they didn't. But with Instagram, even though I've had a little bit of advice from a couple of people, I've never found someone with the mentality that I look to work with. Because the biggest thing for me that's worked is always taking risks. Now, whether that was Instagram, coaching, even with my teaching strategies I'd use, I'm a big believer in you try it and see what happens. And I think what's really important is probably people will see my account after maybe listening to this. I mean, wow, he's got a really big following. But what's really important is I'm not someone who just happened to go viral. I built it by analyzing the data and seeing what worked. And last year, like, everything just lined up with it, where it just extrapolated. Like, the last 15 months, I have gained 10,000 followers or more every single month. And it all come from that trial and error. I posted a meme and it did so much better than my other posts. So I lent into that data. I started posting one a day. I noticed that even though they were all doing better than my other posts, 1 in 20 was doing really well. So I started doing 3 a day. Before 2023, I had never had a post that got over 20,000 views. And that was like maybe once. And for the most, my posts were sitting at like 1 to 3,000. Now, I have at least one hit on one post that goes to 1 million views every single week. It's now the same with my carousels. I track how many shares they get. The more shares, the more people see it. And like everything, because I'm putting that effort in, I'm reaping that reward. It's taken 5 years for it to get to the level that it's at now. But from day one, because of the effort I was putting in, I was always gaining that momentum. Instagram has helped me build my business into what it is, and I definitely wouldn't be here now without it. And I hope that whenever someone looks at one of my posts, they can always see the effort that I put into them. Because to me, I see it as a shop window. People will see that effort, the amount of times I post a day, the effort that the posts go up with, the quality that's going in there with the information. And then we'll think, wow, if that's what he's like just for his shop window, what's the inside going to be like? Like, what about you? Like, how have you found it? Like, I know you're meant to be interviewing me, but have you found Instagram for your business? Like, have you seen any shifts that work best for you or anything like that?
What a great question. Let's just start with the fact that you want to go back into teaching. I mean, I feel really shocked about that. But also I get it. That does make sense, because if the job was manageable, why on earth would we not all do it again? Because we did love it. So that makes sense. I mean, I reckon I can help you with the whole life-work balance for teachers thing, you know, with all the resources we create. So yeah, hook me up when you're a bit further on that journey. In terms of Instagram for us, so Instagram has not really been our focus because we started the business a number of years before, 2013. Our thing is Facebook, really, and Instagram is something that we definitely need to focus on more. What I think is really interesting is, so Ed and I have been through a bit of a process the last couple of years where we've tried to shift the business to be more entrepreneurial again, aligning to who we are rather than people that we've brought in. And our mindset is the small experiments, and that's something that we're pushing really hard at the moment, not just on socials, but everywhere across the business. So I couldn't agree more with you about the small experiments. And so that's something that you're going to see from us more, doing small experiments. And I'm definitely going to get the social teams to have listened to this episode and all your insights, because I just agree, experimentation is key. You have to be able to take the risk. And what I think is interesting, and perhaps why as a company we got to a place where we didn't necessarily do those small experiments, I think culturally, when you have a lot of people who have left the classroom because they're fed up or they're scared or they've just had enough, for a lot of teachers, actually risk-taking is not natural to them. And it's actually very hard to create an environment where risk-taking feels safe when it's not your thing. Because for me and you, it's our thing. But for other people in your company, it can feel really hard, especially if you feel like you've been burned somewhere else, like school, for example. So I think that is something to sort of think about as you potentially grow your team as well, if you bring teachers on board, how to make sure that people in your team have that risk-taking attitude in the same way that you do. Do you think that people give up too easily? Not just when it comes to socials, but anything, because at the end of the day, you're basically saying you've grown your Instagram channel so well because you experiment, you take risks, and you're consistent. Do people give up too easily?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. If teaching was actually manageable, like, why wouldn't I want to go back? I love it. It's just not sustainable the way it is right now. That's why my goal is to help fix the work-life balance problem. Because if I can actually make a difference there, my job's done and I'd be in heaven going back in the classroom, knowing that I've made that real difference. It's why I kind of switched from just being a fitness coach to really working with teachers on that balance, because it's something that needs to be addressed. And I will 100% hold you to that offer. Once I'm further along, I'd love to chat about how your resources could fit in. Who knows, maybe there is even like a collaboration we could do to get something big out there. You know, I'm thinking like events, webinars, CPD, like the more the better. And yeah, maybe I've pulled you into something here. But yeah, I love what you said as well about small experiments, like mindset shifts, stopping trying to get everything perfect and just testing things. To me, that's massive. That's exactly how I've built my Instagram. And honestly, to me, it applies to everything in business. I think the moment you stop experimenting, you also stop growing. And what you said about teachers and risk taking, I think it's so true as well. You're spot on. Teaching doesn't reward risk. If anything, it does the opposite. You've got a curriculum, a structure, a right way to do things. And if you step out of that, you're often questioned. So when a teacher leaves and tries to build something on their own, suddenly there's no structure, there's no clear path, there's no guarantee that if you follow a checklist that you'll actually get results. And I think that freaks people out, especially when you're coming from such a structured background. I think, yeah, because of that, people probably give up too easily, especially with socials. And honestly, with everything. I think a lot of people expect fast results. And when they don't get them, they assume it's not working. But most of the time, they just haven't stuck with it long enough. My Instagram is 5 years old. It took me 6 months to get to 1,000 followers. 6 months to get 1,000 followers. I'm growing by 10,000 followers a month right now. And, you know, long may it continue, but like that wasn't an overnight success. That was 5 years of hard grind. Like with my Instagram, as I said before, like 15 months ago, I never have posts that hit 20,000 views. And now I'm getting millions in a week. I did a post on teacher burnout the other day and it's got over 9,000 shares. It's horrible that it relates to so many, but it's amazing that that connection is there. But that's only there because I stuck with it. That's only there because I kept testing. I kept adjusting. Most people quit because they didn't get it in the first post. I've almost done 2,000 posts online. Well, actually, technically, I've done more because it doesn't count the memes I do, and I stick out 3 to 4 of them a day. So I've probably done close to 3,000. That's where the success comes, in the grind, in the work. To me, that is where we truly get our growth. And I actually think there's something truly satisfying about it. Like, to me now, I don't even think about long-term visions for say. I know where I want to be, but I think if I ever truly got there, I'd probably not enjoy it as much as I do now. Sitting here thinking about what posts to put up, sitting here thinking about how I can help my clients, sitting there thinking how I can advertise, how well I'm doing, messing about. Today I put up some office memes. That's my job now. Like, part of my job is messing about and finding pictures of the American office which match what I'm saying. Part of my job now is finding stupid memes that give me a laugh, because I know if they give me a laugh, they'll give others a laugh. Like, that all comes from the grind and the hard work and loving the path that you're on. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. But yeah, I think risk-taking and not giving up, they're two of the biggest strengths you've got to have in business.
Do you teach children as part of your business offering? Have you considered using resources from Classroom Secrets? At Classroom Secrets, we're always adding new resources for a range of subjects, and we're keen to hear your suggestions for resources too. We know that you didn't go into business to work more hours than you did in the classroom. You went into business to give you freedom. Let us help with that. Visit classroomsecrets.co.uk to sign up. I can hear the satisfaction in your voice as well, you know. You sound just so in love with the process. And I think you have to be in love with the process in business, but you can fall out of love with that process. And I've definitely been there a number of times, and it happens for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's the market, family, things going on in the business. And it can be hard to get back to that place. But I think when you're in love with the process in your business, that's when you are not as bothered about the quick results. What advice would you give to someone who is struggling with the stamina that's needed to stay consistent when they aren't seeing those fast results?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. You have to love the process, because if you're only in it for the end result, you're never going to stick around long enough to actually get there. But I also totally get what you're saying about falling out of love with it. That happens to everyone at some point. Life gets in the way, things don't go how you expected, or sometimes you just burn out and nothing feels exciting anymore. For someone struggling with the stamina to stay consistent when they aren't seeing the quick results, I'd say the first thing is to stop expecting quick results. The moment you shift your mindset from why isn't this working yet to I'm just going to keep getting better, everything changes. If you're constantly chasing a finish line that keeps moving, you're going to feel like you're failing all the time. But if you focus on the progress, even the smallest wins, that's what's going to keep you going. And probably the second thing is actually to track what's working. A lot of people give up because they think that nothing's happening. But if you look properly, they'll see things are building. Maybe it's slow, but it's happening. With Instagram, for example, I didn't go viral overnight. I tracked what people were engaging with. I doubled down on it. You can probably see it in my Instagram now if you go and look. I'm doing a lot of carousels. Why? Because people are sharing them, people are saving them, people are engaging with them. And it's given me an ability to give my message out there to the world. If I'd quit a few months in because my posts weren't blowing up, I'd never be at the stage where I was right now. And I think the last piece of advice I've got for someone is sometimes you do just need a break to reset. If you're absolutely hating it, you don't need to force yourself to push through at 100 miles per hour. Pull back a bit, recharge, and come back with fresh energy. The worst thing you can do is completely quit, but you can adjust the pace to keep yourself going. And to me as well on Instagram, one of the biggest things I've found is to make things as simple as possible. I'm not going to be one of these people that constantly edits videos and, looks for the special hooks and looks for how many different cut points there is. To me, it's all about doing something that's sustainable for you, creating the memes, creating the carousels, sharing my results. I can do that all day. Ask me to edit my own video, and I'm probably not. To me, it's all that balance, and it's leaning into the parts that you love. That's what stops you from that burnout. That's what keeps it enjoyable. That's what keeps you going.
That's brilliant advice, Martin. Thank you. So your big mission is to solve the life-work balance problem for teachers. What does that look like? What does a teacher's day-to-day look like when you've solved that problem?
Yeah, 100% that's the goal. Like, if I can even make a tiny dent in the work-life balance problem for teachers, that to me would be a massive win. Day to day, though, I think it's interesting right now. Like, the reality for most teachers is brutal. In the UK, the average teacher works like 50 to 60 hours a week, even though they're paid for far less. And like surveys from the NEU show that 1 in 3 teachers works more than that 60 hours a week. And actually over half say that they're planning to leave the profession in the next 5 years just simply because of the workload. Like, let's be honest, it's just not sustainable. Now, in an ideal world, the government would step in and actually do something. But we know from past experiences that that's not going to happen anytime soon. They'll promise change, they'll talk about workload reduction initiatives, but it's all just big ideas with little to back it up. So if teachers are going to get their time back, it's got to start with them. That's why my main focus is helping teachers put boundaries in place. It's about changing the culture, shifting the conversation, and showing teachers that it's possible to have a teaching career without sacrificing their entire life. Right now, there is this expectation that you have to work late, take Mark home, answer emails in the evening, and put school before your family, your children, and your life. But when teachers start setting boundaries, finishing work at a certain time, not letting guilt drive them, actually prioritizing their own health, that's when things start to change. So when I think about what a teacher's day should look like, it's not about cutting corners or doing the bare minimum. It's about effective, focused work during the day without the pressure to give up any evenings and weekends just to stay on top of things. It's about school leaders respecting the boundaries too. So teachers don't feel like they always have to be available. They always have to be saying yes to everything. It's about shifting the culture so protecting your time is just normal, not something that you have to feel guilty about. That's the mission for me. It's a big one, but it has to happen because if it doesn't, more and more brilliant teachers will leave. And we might get to a point in the future where there just isn't enough teachers. I know there isn't now, but I'm talking about like serious problems where there's no teachers at all. Like, to me, that's the driving factor behind this, making sure that we've got people in profession that love what they're doing, have that time, and can also have a life outside of school. And I know it's easier said than done, but from the people that I've been working with, like, you can see that difference in them because of the boundaries that they're putting in. And I want that for all teachers now.
I think you've got the right approach. Bottom up is the only way that could potentially work. I think in the past there have been attempts at top down, or at least token attempts. When I think back to when the DFE said, oh, teachers don't need to be doing all these things. They don't need to be submitting the planning beforehand and X, Y, and Z. And nothing really ever came of it because teachers never felt that. Head teachers were still scared that Ofsted would ask for those things. So they never took that pressure off the teachers themselves. And then guess what? When Ofsted came around, they were still asking for those things. So it was almost a sort of media piece, if you will, saying, no, we don't expect teachers to do all these extra hours, but secretly we're hoping that they feel the pain of that they just carry on anyway, and it looks like we've done something good. And I think in response to losing teachers, the government are not as worried about it as you might think. And that's because within a decade, I can't remember exactly how the decade is defined, there are going to be 1 million fewer children in schools because of the birth rates. So that's a factor as well. They're not as worried as you'd think about teachers leaving and teacher recruitment, but it's newsworthy and it makes them look like, they're doing a good thing. To get teachers to take responsibility for themselves and take a bottom-up approach when it's an industry that is so scrutinised takes real bravery from those individual teachers. How do you inspire teachers to become brave enough?
Yeah, I completely agree. I always feel like top-down stuff is more about sounding good than actually making a real difference. Like, you can see that as well with the stuff which is in the papers at the minute about budget cuts and, all the things that they want to slash. They're not thinking about long term. They're just thinking about, oh, this is easy and we can always go after schools because everyone's got a teacher or a school that they've got a grudge with. So it's an easy one to beat. And like you've said, like the DFE can come out and say teachers don't need to do this or that. But if head teachers are still worried about Ofsted and Ofsted are expecting it, then nothing's actually going to change. It just becomes more empty promises. And you're right, the whole we don't want teachers doing too much message always feels more like a PR move. Say the right thing, look like you're solving the issue, but still rely on teachers doing all the extra behind the scenes work, because deep down, the system needs teachers to overwork or it doesn't function at the minute. And I'd actually read something similar to you about the birth rate drop too, but I think what's more interesting than birth rate drops is teacher stats. Like right now, we've got 567,000 teachers in the UK, but 43,500 left the profession last year and only 16,000 new ones joined. Now, if we just extrapolate that and take it, you're talking about under 15 years until we wouldn't have a teacher left. Now, I know that sounds dramatic and extreme, but it just shows how broken things are that you can even suggest that. But I completely agree that I don't think the government's panicking like they should be. They're not bothered. So it has to come from bottom up. And I get that it's hard. We're talking about an industry where every move feels scrutinised and teachers already feel like they've got no energy left to fight back. But to your question, how do you inspire teachers to be brave enough to set boundaries and take their lives back? I think it starts with visibility. The more we show teachers who are doing it, who are finishing work at reasonable times, who are not marking into the night, who are choosing themselves and still being brilliant teachers, the more others will start to believe it's possible. Just look at racing. Nobody believed that you could break a 4-minute mile till someone did it. Then more and more and more and more people did it. It's the belief that sometimes drives it. It's about normalizing the conversation. That might sound small, but when you've spent years in a culture where working yourself into the ground is part of the job, saying, I'm not staying past 5 anymore, feels rebellious when it really shouldn't. So when people see others saying it out loud without shame, it gives them permission to try it too. And finally, for me, it's about giving them the tools, not just saying work less, but actually helping them figure out how. Whether it's time blocking, mindset shifts, better boundaries, or even language that they can use with SLT. Like one of my favorite ones is, can I check my diary? So no matter whether you want to do something or you don't want to do it, when another member of staff or a member of SLT comes and asks you, oh, could you do this club? Or could you run this subject? Or anything else? Never answer them straight away. Say, can I check my diary? Then go away by yourself and decide whether you can actually do it. And if you decide that you don't want to do it, it gives you that time to compose yourself to go back and say, oh, I'm awfully sorry, but I can't do this. You don't need to give a reason. You don't need to say why. You just say, no, thank you. But you can go into it without the pressure of being put under the spotlight. Like, to me, I want to help every teacher feel like they're not just allowed to take the time back, but they're equipped to do it, because they're two completely separate things. The bravery doesn't always come in the big moments. Sometimes it's just deciding to leave your laptop closed one evening and realizing that the world didn't end. That's where to start.
Martin, thank you so much for sharing your insights. We've talked about so much on this podcast that I know will be helpful for people who are thinking about starting a business in education or already have one. What do you think we haven't talked about today that we should talk about that would be helpful for new founders and existing founders to know in the education space?
Yeah, no, I absolutely have loved, us having this chat, this talk on this podcast. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, you put me on the spot there with what we haven't talked about. I think we've talked about quite a lot on this. But I think when it comes to educators going into businesses in the education system, I think one thing that I'd say that we haven't really spoke about a lot is, I think, the bond between teachers and educators online. And I think I've had a look in other industries and I can't really see it anywhere else. Maybe just because I'm in education more, I see it more. But to me, I think anyone who's in an education business has the ability to reach so many people, because the education sector is so prominent online, especially Instagram, Facebook, which is probably one I need to work on a bit more, and even TikTok now, Twitter, all of it. To me, that's probably the thing we haven't spoke about enough, even though we spoke about it. Social media is so powerful that it can literally change the game for anyone in education and propel your business overnight. And yeah, people will almost do it as a side project, a little thing to post. But if you really put the time into it, you can connect with audiences, you can get in front of your ideal people, and you can create something bigger than you could possibly imagine. I just went over 180,000 followers on Instagram yesterday. And honest to God, that is bigger than my wildest dreams. And it's given me that platform to be the voice that I want to be and to work with the people that I want to work with. And that never would have happened by me creating a fancy website or making leaflets and flyers or ringing around schools. Sure, that stuff has its place. But the biggest one is you have something there which is free that can turn your business from a little idea to a multi-six-figure business in the space of a year, just by you putting effort into it. I think you can do it in any industry, but the education sector, that potential is there because the growth, the sharing and everything is there.
Yeah, sometimes I think people don't want to admit that actually in education. We grew on social media. Other companies that are now huge grew on social media. And you can grow on social media. We have this opportunity now that wasn't there 20 years ago to reach so many of the right kind of people and have them there waiting to know what you're about. And I think you do have to open yourself up to that opportunity if you want to make an impact quickly as well. Martin, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. It's been so helpful. And hopefully we'll catch up on the podcast at some point as well to find out how you're getting on with your massive mission for saving teachers' lives on a Sunday and evenings and a Saturday as well.
Oh, no, the pleasure's been all mine. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, a little catch up in the future sounds good as well.
Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.